And following that very interview by Beatrice Edu with Moses Asaga of the MPA, we'll also have to follow up with a lot more discussions. And my guest for the morning is Kobe Champong, the Chief Executive for the Youth Employment Agency. And YE is the acronym for it. Thanks for joining me, sir. Member of Parliament for Ekuapem South and Obi Amwa. Osei Bunsu Amwa is here with me. Thanks for joining me, sir.
Thank you, Roland.
All right. It's
you look sharp.
Thank you, as always. And now we've had the Trade Union Congress following the increment as announced by the MPA with a statement. And the summation is that they've rejected reasons assigned by the MPA, which it claimed warranted a 9% increment in fuel prices. So far as the TUC is concerned, according to the statement, the adjustment was forced down the throat of the MPA by the bulk oil distributing companies whom the TUC accused of sabotaging the full operations of the Thermal Oil Refinery for their own parochial interests. The MPA has attributed the current increment, which took effect from Sunday, to the cedi depreciation and increase in crude oil prices on the international market. And talking about crude oil prices, as monitoring this morning for over the last 11 hours, it is between, it depends on light and bread crude, between $59.43 per barrel to about $66.27 dollars per barrel on the New York Mercantile Exchange, as well as the London Stock Exchange as well. So as far as those future prices are concerned. Now, Kobe, I have to start with you. What do you make of some of the reasons given by the MPA Chief Executive for the increment and some of the suggestions in making, thinking that the ordinary consumer is very much hypocritical, not willing to pay the right prices for fuel as far as that is concerned?
Well, good morning to your viewers. I guess the reasons given by the MPA, as far as I'm concerned, are realistic. Realistic because we constantly see the cedi depreciating, and that affects what we purchase from the international market, because the value of the cedi, as long as it depreciates, make the value of the dollar against which we match some of our purchases high. That is one point. Now, why is that so? Because after a little period of seeing crude oil prices come down, we started inching back up, which means if you are buying it at a certain rate now, you would have to pony up more. Add that to your depreciating cedi, and you realize that the value goes up. If this continues over time, it builds up a certain amount of cost that has to be taken care of anyway. Now, this is what accounts for the BDCs constantly arguing that they are not reaping the full benefits of what they sell to government in terms of petrol, and that the cedi depreciation is affecting them because they are all buying on the international market. If this is so, what has to be done? You need to arrest the cost buildup that is constantly going. And, you know, I place all this cost buildup in the realm of subsidizing. Because if you don't actually pay the real price for the product, it means there's some subsidies going on. If you look at our petroleum, the various categories of fuels that we use, apart from the diesels and the petrols and all those things, we have kerosene, we have premix fuel. Premix specifically is subsidized for fishermen, just so they can go and get a catch and bring it and sell to us. So the subsidy element is built in there. Now, over a period, it becomes a cost to the nation, and it has to be taken care of. How do you take care of it? The only way you take care of it, as far as the product is concerned, is by raising the price. And you are raising the price because it is in tandem with what is prevailing in the world market. In this case, it was raised by 28 pesos per liter. And that is what it is. Now, when you don't raise the price and the cost builds, what happens to the BDCs? They are unable to raise letters of credit to bring in the products. What is the effect of that? You face shortages of the product on the market. And that is the biggest inconvenience that every Ghanaian wants to avoid. So the issue is, what would you do in the face of increasing value of the dollar versus the cedi, and the fact that you have to eliminate your costs as far as those things are concerned, the things that you are subsidizing? And the real reason is has to raise it up. Raise it up so you can take care of all those costs that have piled, and also make sure that the product is on the market for people to have access to. Other than that, we will grind ourselves to a halt.
Or beyond observations?
Well, Good morning to viewers. Well, I think the TUC is spot on. Spot on in the sense that if you look at the two main variables that the MPA has alluded to in increasing the price of fuel, it means that we have been very inefficient in managing our system. One, we have toll. Somehow, we have abandoned toll, and now the main players are BDCs. As we speak, we don't even know the number. That's one. Two, we don't know how they operate. Three, every time they come out to tell us that government owes them so much because of exchange losses, foreign exchange losses. And government always have to make up to these BDCs because they don't seem to even agree as to how much government owes them. And the more it continues, the more you are likely to be in this mess. That's one aspect of it. Is that the most efficient way of importing crude and then selling to us? How efficient it is, because across board, even if you listen to BOST, their interim report, Ernst & Young, so much to do with BDCs. If you listen to government itself, they've not even agreed on how much they're supposed to pay BDCs, because they always come back to them saying that you owe us because of exchange losses. You owe us because the price we gave you, the price has changed, etc., etc., etc. That's one aspect of it. Of course, the other aspect is the value of the CD. It's only when you manage your economy well that your CD will stabilize. If for last year, at the end of the year, CD had devalued by 31%. In the beginning of this year, first quarter, beyond first quarter, 19%. It means you're not managing your economy well. And if this is how you're going to go on, then you always give excuses that we are subsidizing, we can't subsidize. We are subsidizing, we can't subsidize. But if you could even maintain your CD, because if for 8 years of the MPP administration, you could get CD devalued by only about 20 to 25% within 8-year period. And within a year, it devalues by 31%. Obviously, if you're not running your economy well, and you depend on foreign exchange to import your crude, and you are obliged to pass it on to the consumer, this is the kind of situation that we will have. So, if TUC should complain, they're complaining because, one, you're not running the economy well, and two, you're not managing the BDCs well. How many BDCs are even in the system? How many? And compared to toll, is it more efficient?
Okay, let me ask you this. Why is it that the subject of fuel price increases are very much emotive on the part of civil society, on the part of politicians, and on the part of consumers, as well as the players in the industry itself?
Well, it will be motive even more in this current situation because of what we find with our energy situation. Because the NPA has confirmed that Ghanaians are consuming more fuel. We are consuming more fuel, not because probably we have more cars than ever, but because we are using generators to run our factories, to run our homes, to run our businesses, to run everything. If I have a generator at home, I'm now not buying only fuel for my car. I'm buying fuel for my generator. We used to be a situation where in normal times, maybe probably for a whole year, you would have bought the fuel for your generator maybe once or twice. But now, every other day, you buy fuel. So we are consuming more. Once you're consuming more, it means it's costing the average person more. That is one aspect of it, because then businesses, households, everywhere, even the average Baba, the NPA was talking about average Baba, even thinking of fuel, which used to be something that was unheard of, because he was running a small kiosk. You go there maybe weekends or early mornings, he cuts your hair, and he would have only used electricity instead of going to buy fuel. So now we are buying more, consuming more, and then if you raise it, it means the person's cost of production, cost of everything will go up. So if you don't manage it well, as we are doing now, this is the kind of mess that we find ourselves in. And we should really sit up and discuss it and look. This morning somebody was making a comment which I would have to agree with him. That there are some state institutions that probably we should not allow politicians to head. Because we polarize the whole thing.
Like what, the MPA?
Like the MPA. Like BOST. Right? I don't know, all of a sudden you go everywhere, it's politicians who are other board chairmen or CEOs. And sometimes it becomes polarized because he speaks, I speak. It becomes MPP and DC. We wish we had a technocrats telling us that.
Or somebody who was more neutral.
Who appeared neutral. So that all of us can speak to it. If you take on EC chairman and we are objective, both of us will say that, no, we think this is the way you should run it. But if you go and put a pure politician in some of these places, this is a fallout. But that's just by the way.
If Mr. Alex Mould was there, would it have been better if he spoke this way, but because he was a non-political person? He still would have been appointed by a political entity.
No. You still have professionals
Mr. Champo,
who run their jobs.
How true or not is the argument that is surfacing on the public discourse on social media and the other relevant traditional media we have, that perhaps government has detached itself from the emotions and the daily livelihoods and the affections of the ordinary Ghanaian? If, let's say, important and critical managers like Moses Asaga, who is with the MP, would say, it will be prudent if somebody pays extra 20 pesos in addition to 4 for, let's say, a haircut, so to speak, and make comparisons to livelihoods in Germany, in the UK, etc. When we know, truthfully, the livelihoods are not the same and the conditions of living there are really better than ours.
You see, this is a typical issue that is very emotive, yes, for everybody, because it's about dollars and cents, or it's about cedis and pesos. It's about what you spend to make your livelihood on a daily basis. And human beings by nature do not want to spend when they don't want to spend. That's one fact. 2, having said that, there is also the object reality of every situation. Object reality. What Mr. Asaga is saying is the fact. You are looking at a situation where government subsidizes, okay, fuel imports through its pricing mechanisms. There's a subsidy in there, it's built in. These subsidies are a cost to the nation. Someone must take care of that cost. How do we take care of that cost? The issues, you weigh them. Is it better to add a 28 peso increase to the current price, or leave the cost to build up over a certain period and it becomes a huge cost and a major burden? Look, you remember what happened to Ghana Commercial Bank? It almost went under. Went under because of what? All these subsidies and cost that built. That was almost turning a whole bank upside down. We never looked at it in terms of what would have happened because of the plethora of customers they have whose monies were lodged in the bank, who would have gone bankrupt just by a single decision. You understand? So it is always important to look at the business side of things. Everyday practice. You have to look at the business side and what is reality. 28 pesos on a liter versus building the cost over a period and not having enough money for oil to come in to run our economy, which is based on oil anyway, and then leaving all the system grinding to a halt, which is preferable. Every cost build up in every institution is painful because then you have to pony up more. But you have to look at the brighter side of things. If you have fuel and you are still working, that is where your business making decisions impact how you make your profits. Just like Moses Asaga was saying with the barber. I mean, if you would pay 28 pesos more and make your 16 cedis, let's assume on average he cuts 4 pieces of hair, gets 4 barbering jobs done in a day and makes 16 cedis and pays 28 pesos per liter versus just shutting down, no making any, which is preferable. That is how we need to look at these things. And once you begin to use the economic sense of looking at these things, you probably have to relegate the emotive part, because the emotive part is always there for everybody at any time.
How do we look at the economic sense of things when we know, on the average, the ordinary Ghanaian will not be somebody who owns, let's say, a 60,000 BMW, as alluded to by Mr. Asaga, and will not be driving the best of cars, may not have the best per capita as far as earnings are concerned, and so will not be in that bracket for which we feel that person is comparable to whoever is living in Germany or averagely in the UK?
Well, to deal with the emotive part first, I believe that they want to play on our emotions by saying that if you don't increase it, there will be no fuel at all. And which one do you prefer? I don't prefer any of them. I don't prefer any of them. It's between the devil and the deep blue sea. And you think that I should be able to choose one? What I want is for you to manage it well so that you don't just, even when the...
But truthfully, you need to make options.
Because
if it's between a devil and a deep blue sea, you're almost in a catch-22 situation.
No, I'm
so
coming to that.
Choices.
In the face of so-called automatic adjustment formula, in the face of reduction of crude prices on the world market, if these systems were running well, we would not be in this situation. That's number one. So you don't mismanage the system and come to tell me that if I didn't increase it, there would have been shortage, and which one do you prefer? Which means I should shut up, because the option would have been no fuel to use for my barbering shop. So if we have increased it, then you should be grateful. When indeed, if you have managed it well, you will not have increased it. That's one aspect of it.
And that would have been what? Managing what?
No, that's what I'm talking about. How the BDCs, how do they bring their crude in, and then how do we manage the economy as far as the value of the CD is concerned? That's the point I've already made. Then number two, you bring in the issue of standard of living and then other variables vis-a-vis European countries or even more developed situations. They can never be the same. Look, how about the public transport system elsewhere, where people can even decide that they will park their vehicles and join the system? Is it the same here? Two, you're expecting the average person who's running a bus or trotro or whatever to only look at the price of fuel to run his business. There are other cost variables. He will tell you spare parts have gone up, so and so. Now they're saying that if you ask to wait till June, God knows what they're bringing to us in June. Because they are telling you that what the system they are running is not only based on fuel. It's based on other factors. We come back to the fact that if he has to import everything, and now the CD is just skyrocketing, then obviously you're putting him in a situation where eventually he has to run out of business. Because the average person is feeling the pinch. The average person is have to cut everything to the bare bones, as they say it. But now you can get to a point where you don't even have the bones.
Do you think government is out of touch with the realities on the ground?
That is the impression you get, because you are listening to the BMWs and how the reality is that even if you talk about the gasless, the four-wheel drives, most of them, they are used by government officials. Most of them, I'm ready to challenge anybody. Most of them, in the sense that ministers, MPs, that we even buy our own cars, where we have the option to even have the four-wheel drives. We use most of this, but how many are we? How many are we as compared with those who use the other vehicles? The average person who manages to get a small vehicle, second-hand,
1.6,
just to be able to commute from one point to the other, home to office, office to home, and then maybe lunchtime branch somewhere else. That average person is not a fuel guzzler, but he feels the pinch because you keep increasing, and there are no options. He gets home, the place is dark, he has to buy more fuel. So please, these are social democrats, but sometimes when they speak, they sound very...
But the Social Democrats are saying that we have to be realistic.
Tea Party people.
They are saying that we have to be realistic.
Realistic is being running the government and the machinery well,
but for example, Nanado says basically increasing the current prices to the point at which it is means that we're not trying to empathize with the ordinary Ghanaian. And the ordinary Ghanaian is already really under a lot of conditions which have been precipitated by the energy crisis and the current development that the economy seems to be suffering thereof.
Well, have you done, or you are still asking your question? You see, sometimes I don't want to get into this politics of he said and all that, because history is always there to teach us. Campaign 2000. Campaign 2000. I'm talking about the 2000 campaign, when His Excellency President Kufuor was candidate. What happened? He held gallons on the platform and said, "Can you afford this gallon of petrol?" God being so good, he won. What was the immediate action he took when he took over? He increased the price of fuel, 68%. Why did he do that? Because he had to face the object reality of the situation. That culminated in the formation of a bill or development of a bill that brought the MPA into being to regulate how we do our fuel price index. Why did he take all these steps? Because the reality was that you needed to let the people understand how these things work. So when you are a politician in opposition, you speak differently. When you are faced with the object reality, you take the proper steps to do what is right. That is what the NDC government is doing. The reality is that we must address the reality. Look, we talk about fuel subsidies and we always skirt it like it is no issue. Major issue. If you look around the world, there are about 27 or 28 countries that are all moving away from subsidizing fuel. Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, they are all doing away with it because no country is ever built on subsidies. You cannot. It is physically not sustainable. It is not. It is not physically sustainable to continue to subsidize everything. It is not. And we have a history as a country. We built our country from the beginning on giving freebies because we moved from a state of being a vassal of the British Kingdom to becoming an independent nation. We had to basically train people at a quicker pace, and therefore to do that, we enticed them with incentives, freebies, subsidies, go to school for free, do this, do this.
So now you're blaming the first government?
No.
That the subculture has not been right?
Exactly. We have not moved over from that curve. We are still persisting in that curve. When we were 4 million, we were doing this. Now we are 24 million. We want to still do things we were doing when we were 4 million. How is that possible? How is that possible? Look at our power generation issues. Pre-Akosombo, post-Akosombo, from 1960s, when the Volta River Authority came into being and Akosombo was there. How many dams did we have? We had only Pong and Akosombo, feeding all of us. Over the years, the population has grown. We've brought in the thermal combination, the TICOs, the TACAs, the TTs, and all those things. Still, we are facing a generation deficit because, one, rapid urbanization. Everybody wants to live in a city. And when you're in the city, you need power. How many people want to pay the realistic rates for the power? Today, we are complaining to our father we are spending fuel to fire our generators. That is the real cost of power generation. Because if you take hydro aside, and you look at how we generate power using the thermal plants and all those things, they are run on what? Oil. And oil is bought at the world price.
I don't understand all that you're saying.
So
but at the end of the day...
Listen, please. So we need to be realistic.
But at the end of the day...
We need to be realistic as a
the
nation.
consumer, the prices are passed on to the consumer.
You are the final person on the chain.
And at the end of the day, the normal things that the consumer will need to buy, not necessarily those that are directly affected, but those that are indirectly affected get to feel the pinch. And it could be the indirect person who is in the village, not necessarily benefiting directly from fuel.
Yes, good. But you see, Roland, the issue is, in removing subsidies as a policy, you must also do something in reverse. The reverse is target people who are actually below the poverty line, who are actually affected by removal of subsidies. What do you do? Proper targeting requires that you bring in programs that help these people. That is why we have the program called what? LEAP, Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty.
That's not enough, is it?
It is not enough, but it is a start. As you continue to increase it,
okay.
You are because look, on average, the average Ghanaian, those who have spent close to about, if you divide it, you get about 15 point something cedis a year. That is subsidy that goes to them. The 3% who do not have that, it's only 3 cedis.
Obi, wrap up for me.
Well, I was not expecting him to tell my story. So he stopped at election 2000. Fast track election 2008.
Yes.
Before the blackboards and the flip charts and everything, even when the fuel price on the world market was $147, they were telling us that we could fix the fuel price so low in Ghana.
So you're saying they also did the same?
Worse. To the extent that when they
was it
said we
worse?
will reduce fuel prices drastically, since then, have they been able to reduce fuel prices drastically? Well, the variable of even maintaining the CD was lost on them.
No, that is
was
not
lost
true.
on them.
That is not
And
true.
come 2015, they've mismanaged the economy so much that
Let's talk about mismanagement.
They are always,
and yet you are not able to point anything. What is mismanagement? You are using a broad term mismanagement. What does that mean?
That the value of the CD.
All right.
That is the only composition of
let's
It's
look
not
at this.
composition. If you're not running the economy well, that's what happens.
Let's look at
That's
this.
what happens.
48,000 teacher trainees across the country are boycotting classes as they press on to get government to restore their teacher training allowances. And they said until government responds positively to the problem facing the colleges, they will not budge. Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, who is the Deputy Minister of Education in charge of tertiary education, he's spoken to the media extensively and says that government would not kowtow to the demands of them. I start with you.
Well, this is something that should have been avoided. Should be avoided because probably better communication and dialogue and rationalization would have brought in a certain kind of arrangement and understanding which would not have reached this point. How am I saying this? If you listen to the Deputy Minister, Deputy Minister is saying that by abolishing these allowances, they have managed to bring more people on board. They have managed to recruit more people, because they used to have quotas, or we used to have quotas where, because government was paying, the heads were always restricted to the kind of people they could bring on board. But now that the system has been freed, more people are having access to training colleges, and because of that, they think that the issue of allowances is something that they should not bring back. The issue is that how have they managed to engage those who are recruited into the teacher training scheme? That's number one. Two, in their manifesto, their solution to this issue was to open more training colleges, to absorb more people into the teacher training system, and then the teaching profession. But when we were saying that we could, because we had pushed that level even to the diploma awarding level, we could expand the system. They thought that building more would assist. They've abandoned that. Now they've come back to the same thing. Their solution is that, indeed, if you are teacher trainee, you should be looking at loans more than allowances. But you need to rationalize and convince the average person, because the average person thinks that when it comes to allowances, that is where he can also make ends meet in various ways. Now you're saying that he should go for a loan and then later on pay for what he has.
Okay.
That is what is on the...
Do you think the step that government has taken is good or not? Will inure to the benefit of prudent use of public expenditure?
Well, one is drastic. Two, if you listen to them, even within them, they don't seem to be on the same page. Fast track to even utilities on campuses. Some are saying that it's a rush. Some are saying that we should build the right infrastructure. It all depends on how you manage it. That's the most important thing. Because if you come to even the utilities on campus, they rush into it. When the students jumped, now they've abandoned it. And said we haven't said anywhere, even though when they had even signed communiques and the National Council for Tertiary Education had released these communiques, trying to even push nooks into it, later on to come and deny that we were not part of it. It's all because of the way they've managed it and handled it.
So the communication should be right. The dialogue,
the analysis, rationalization, everything should
now
be
we've
right.
come to the point
and
about
then implementation,
getting freebies and being sponsored and what the demands are and why I will go to this institution because I'll get this allowance, etc.
Well, see, it's all part of the broader term that I use, entitlement mentality, that has engulfed this country. We always think what persisted in the 50s should persist in the 90s and should persist in the 2000s. But that is not reality. Things change. You see, we always rationalize on these things as if every decision has to be taken on a linear base. But that is not true. The economy, listen, the economy is a system that has many parts that need to be satisfied simultaneously. You cannot use a linear argument to fix an economy.
Well, we do understand, but for those who are key stakeholders, they need to be brought into the
Listen, if the students have an understanding of what is going on, they should be thankful because expansion has been made for people who otherwise would not have been in training to be there. Under the quota system, the schools were supposed to take what quota was given them, leaving a lot of people who wanted to become teachers outside the system to fend for themselves. Now, because the quota system has been removed, enrollment has increased because people now feel, look, I can afford it, so let me go. Now, if you have the opportunity to go and train yourself, why are you still complaining about the allowance? That was limiting your ability to enter the school in the first place. It's an entitlement mentality because they realized that it was there in the past. But the conditions then has changed. They are not the same conditions.
Oh, do you understand? You may be justified in your argument.
Please, let me finish.
But borrowing from the responses of Obiamwa and the fact that you need to do the engagement adequately with the stakeholders.
But so that said there has not been any engagement.
So that there's a buy-in of whatever introduction of the policy there is.
I don't think there has not been any communication. There has been communication.
Yes, true. But it's not been well taken.
It's not been well taken because people are sticking to their entrenched positions. It's about an allowance, freebie. I need to get it. I'll get it. I'm entitled to it.
So you force the policy whether or not
it's not forcing the policy. They need to be very objective in the kind of demands they are making. Let me make this point. Look, we are public universities and private universities. Public universities pay less fees than the private universities, but people still enroll in the private universities. In the public universities, as we speak, government does not give them a feeding allowance. You're on your own. Are they complaining? You don't think they will be interested in getting a feeding allowance? In the tertiary training colleges, government provides a feeding allowance for them. Your counterparts in the universities are not getting that, but you are getting that because you are training in the training schools for teachers. And you are still complaining about other allowances? I mean, come on, let's be real here. Let's be real. We need to put ourselves in a position to stop the artificial competition that we are generating. It's not helping this country.
Obi, so now, we need to have a lot more dialogue because we're just having nurses also coming in. They're from Nungwa. Is it Dunkwa also? They were bused to the Independence Square here in Accra. We want to watch them a bit for a minute and then we'll come back to Obiamwa to respond to some of those concerns being raised by the trainees who tend to be receiving the allowances.
We're currently here at the Ministry of Health where the trainee nurses camped the entire night. Well, they are saying that until their problem is resolved, until whatever they are asking for is given them, they are not moving an inch from the ministry. Currently, we have an official here who is asking them to go back to the Independence Square, but they are simply refusing. We're going to try to find out from them what exactly will get them off the premises of the Ministry of Health. Will nobody talk to me? Good morning. No, currently what is going to really get you off this place? So you, no, by you saying it, then you get... You stated bad administration of the NMCC. So come and counter that until you talk to me. We don't. What exactly is the problem? And what did we say?
The problem is allowance.
So you come and tell me that one. Well, you can tell the difficulty in getting them to utter a word into our microphone. For them, they are just not happy and they are not even talking to the media until their allowance is restored. The allowance, trainee allowances is restored to them. We'll still try to see if any of them would really compromise or agree to talk to us.
And we have to clarify that it's because there's been a delay in the payment of the allowances to the trainees at the various health institutions, not because the allowances have been withdrawn, just like the way the teachers, and you were on the subject.
Wrapping up, I would say that we've talked about management, implementation. These are the critical issues. But one thing that is even coming up, which is very worrying and dangerous, is where people are recruited. Their salaries for months will be in arrears, some a whole year, and when they are paid for only 3 months. I've seen some, I've heard some. As we speak.
And they will not be paid for the rest of the month?
I don't understand it.
You mean, is there forfeiture?
I don't understand it, that somehow...
No, is that the policy? We know that was announced by the Ministry of Finance.
Somehow between the Ministry of Finance and the Controller Accountant General's Department, there's a situation where some will be on the job for 12 whole months, but when it's time to pay them, they will tell them that we are paying you only for 3 months. That's number one. Number two, why would you recruit somebody permanently and it takes so long for the salaries to be paid? As we speak, go to local government service and all those places. I don't understand.
It's not the first time. I'm very much related to a nurse, and it took a lot of years.
No, but is that how
that was way back in the early 2000s.
Yes, how many years now? 15 years now, and we're still doing the same thing. That we have to recruit people, and then we don't have any way of ensuring that.
So we need to change.
Of course. Why does the person survive for a whole year if you don't pay the person, even though he's been permanently recruited? And if you say this is not the first time, does that solve the problem? But if it's not even the first time, the person is happening to is for the first time. If it happened to somebody in 2000 and the person survived, it doesn't mean that it happens to somebody in 2015 and you expect him to survive.
What are your last words, sir?
Well, I think I would agree with Obi on this call. I don't believe people need to be recruited and kept away from their salaries for a very long time. There must be a quicker way of approving, authorizing these people to be recruited in the first place so that you don't, needlessly let them suffer. But you see, on the whole, we need to look at things from a proper perspective. This country needs to begin to see the reality in some of the things we do. And that would, Obi was talking about living conditions in Germany and elsewhere. Look, I've lived abroad, and I know for a fact that most Ghanaians who live abroad don't tell the real stories to their folks when they come back. They don't tell the real stories. They do make up stories and tell you. Go and sit with them and see how many of them own houses, how many of them own cars, how many of them are able to afford the things.
You can't own cars abroad?
No. I said how many. I'm not saying they don't. They do. But how many of them do? The question is, they live on credit. It's a cashless society. Your credit card with a 28-day billing cycle enables you to buy everything and wait till 28 days before you pay some part of it. So you are perpetually indebted to credit card companies. In Ghana, we do everything by cash. We pay cash for everything. And that is one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of liquidity in our system. Because we spend cash paying for everything instead of also having a credit system that gives you a little leeway to spend and pay up later at a certain fee. Those are the things we need to do. That is the biggest difference between us and those living abroad.
But then you need the economy running.
That's true, but it's the economy that is running. Let me tell you final thing. In Ghana,
because they know that you can work.
The average Ghanaian, listen, the average Ghanaian can afford to buy a plot of land and build his own house.
Average Ghanaian.
I'm telling you. We see this every now and then.
We see average means what?
Oh, anybody who works and makes an income.
Can buy land.
It happens. It is happening.
After how many years of work?
Listen, it might take you 10 years to build. But you see, the moment you finish putting up your house, you know what frees you up? A lot of income. Because now, you only have to pay your property rate. You don't have to pay advances to landlords like you would have done, ponying up cash advances to landlords. It frees you up. Ask your counterparts in the, living in the developed countries. You take a mortgage, it's for 30 years. You pay an amount every month. When you default, that's it. The house is taken back from you. Yes, repo.
What's happening in Ghana here?
That's what I'm saying.
It happens in Ghana.
It is now a culture we are trying to develop. So
we need to have a change of mindset.
We need to have a change of mindset, the way we deal with things. We can't live on this entitlement.